The topics I would like to cover today for Deathmaze 5000. First of all, what is it? Why did I bother making a Fair Play edition, a fan mod? I'll give you some no spoiler code anecdotes, followed by a very heavy spoiler walkthrough of the whole thing. So, starting with what is Deathmaze 5000? It's what we would call today an escape room game. It's got 3D maze navigation plus a noun verb parser and inventory. So you could think of it as like a text adventure game with wizardry style rendering and movement, although it does predate wizardry. This is a notoriously hard game. Jason Dyer described Deathmaze as having one of the most deeply inscrutable puzzles in adventure game history. And Jason plays a lot of games, so that's saying something. My personal history with this is that I played it obsessively when it came out in 1980, and I finally solved it in 2020, 40 years later, which was, I could tell you, very satisfying. This thing had been taking up rent in my head for so long. But it's also kind of disappointing, not because it was finally over, but because, like, for example, there's a really badass item in this game that ends up being completely pointless. And it's not just that, like, I never found its purpose. I have analyzed since every single byte of this program. Like, there's nothing I missed. And it's not the only useless item either. There are others. So I'd say that some of the difficulty of this game does come from challenge. It is challenging. But some is just from unfairness. There, I consider that the unused items are, if not unfair, at least inelegant. There are also unfair puzzles. Now, this term came up at Stefan's talk as well. But if you're unfamiliar with it, a moon logic puzzle is one that still makes no sense even after you know the answer. You're like, how was I supposed to come up with that? Um, Another example of unfairness is that there are many ways you could do something in this game that makes it now impossible to win. You've got stuck. You're in an unwinnable state. Actually, this wasn't really a big deal back then because save games weren't really a thing yet. Tapes were slow. Typically, when they go across the board of genre, you just restart your game, fairly often. And yet, this game does have a saved game feature, and the instructions encourage you to use it. In fact, there is one puzzle in the game that is impossible to solve without trial and error, restoring from a save each time, also known as save scumming. And that feels inelegant. We can do better nowadays. Now, despite all that, the game was so clever and it was so enjoyable in many other ways. I decided I was going to rescue it from itself, be a kind of script doctor of the design. So I call it the Fair Play Edition. So, what in my world makes something fair? What are good design principles? You have to have a manageable number of possibilities, like not so many that the possibilities are just overwhelming and there's too many things to try at once, and not too few possibilities where it's essentially just a linear experience. You kind of want that nice balance. Um, I think everything in the game should really have a purpose. That can be a mechanical purpose. It could just be a storytelling purpose. That's all right. Jokes are okay, even sick jokes. The point is just every element of the game really needs a payoff. Otherwise, it's just cluttering your possibilities, and you spend the whole game pondering, what is this for? And it's really disappointing when it wasn't for anything at the end. Um, Puzzles should have logical solutions, whether inspired by your real world expectations or hinted by something in the game itself. So here is a progression diagram of the original game, and the useless things are basically dead ends progression wise. So I've marked them with stop signs, and all the moon logic I've flagged here with little red moon symbols. So for my fan mod, I added hints for every moon. I added a continuation path for every dead end. And in some cases, this meant actually adding a new puzzle sometimes that wasn't present in the original game yet, but that seemed to be suggested by the pieces that it gave us to play with. So Before I get into all the details of what I changed, I'll share some spoiler-free stuff that I found while dissecting the program code. And if this part bores you, hang tight. We'll get to the really good stuff later. But for some of you, this is the good stuff, so you're welcome. All right. I'm going to cover, first of all, the versionings. I began my project with disassembling the binary code and annotating I was making fresh legible source code that would compile a binary exact duplicate of the original program. And I didn't discover until 11 weeks later, after I was done with the whole project, Andy McFadden already did all that stuff. Like literally 1 hour after I hit publish, I'm done. I went searching on the web. I'm like, what? It's already there. Could have saved myself 3 weeks. Well, what do you know? I also found Andy had a really cool interactive hint guide. It's an interactive presentation of the original paper hints that you could get from the publisher. And with permission, I borrowed his HTML structure for my Fair Play hint guide as well. I also found he's got a tool that he wrote that's really useful for reverse engineering 8-bit stuff called SourceGen. And I discovered a little too late for this project, but I've been using it ever since. It's great. I recommend it. The platforms that Frank Core Jr. published his games on, it was all TRS-80. That was his primary. Deathmaze is the only one that got an Apple II port and a contemporary port. But there were at least 2 versions published of the Apple II. There was an early release that Andy's listing, which matches the copy that I had since 1980. And there was a later release. There's one in the Asimov archive on a multi-game disc that matches the Wazaday that got dumped. And these are different by a little bit. Sorry. There's like 4 alterations that were not hacks, clearly. They rippled jump tables and stuff. I'm sure they were recompiled from source. So that was kind of a fun discovery. My Git project does reconstruct both of these editions exactly, and they're both playable on my release disk in case anyone wants to compare them. And I also found, 23 more bugs and mistakes and things that I corrected. And I included a build with only these fixes and none of the game design changes for the purists who don't like my fan mod, but they still deserve a bug-free experience. So that's all on the disk that you can download. My Git project. The Apple can draw in a much finer resolution than the TRS-80 could. Reason for this partly is that the TRS-80 has the built-in font has 64 glyphs, which are used for constructing kind of chunky images. So all graphics are done not by plotting pixels, but by carefully choosing which characters to print in the cells that you're given. So the Apple II, it can plot individual pixels, but instead of completely rewriting all the maze draw routines, they wrote a single routine to mimic that technique. It just copies 7x8 bitmaps from a table into the Apple's high-res frame buffer, one cell at a time, kind of like a custom font, basically. And there are a couple of places in the game where I ended up wanting to draw something new, and I chose to work within this system, restricting myself to artwork that could just be drawn with the existing character set. Because, someday I might want to backport my edition to TRS-80. I might as well not make it any harder on myself to do that. They have different CPUs. The TRS-80 has a Z80 chip. The Apple II is a 6500 chip. I have not yet disassembled the Z80 code, but I do suspect that whoever ported it was probably not very familiar with the 6502. I'll give you some evidence of that. This little bit of code makes a temporary copy of the A register by pushing it on stack. Then it transfers the value from the Y register so it can store it in memory, and then restores the old value of A by pulling it off the stack. But on the 6502, there is an instruction to just store Y directly. There's no need to route it through A like that. When you're decrementing the X register, if you've decremented it to 0, the branch can already see that. That doesn't need to get routed through A either. They used a 3-byte instruction when they're storing to 0 page, when there exists 2-byte instructions to do that. If you're not familiar with how 6502 stores negative numbers, real briefly, hexadecimals 00 through 7F are your normal values of 1 through, or 0 through 127, and 80 through FF are the negative numbers, 128 to -1. So if you want to check, if you've got a value that has a minus sign on it, you can just compare it to 80. You say if it's lower than that, if it's minus, then it doesn't have the minus sign, and if it's plus, it is. But the thing is, on 6502, once you've loaded that value into the A register, it's already set the plus minus flag. You don't need to do the comparison. Well, what if you want to compare two numbers against each other? Well, then it's time for another good idea, bad idea. You could use the comparison operator to check plus and minus for a general signed comparison. Is this number greater than the other one? This only really is reliable, though, in the half the range of the numbers you've got, the possible range. So fortunately, Deathmaze only uses those numbers. They use it judiciously, but the compare instruction is really designed for unsigned comparison and checking the carry flag, meaning unsigned, meaning none of your values have minus signs. And this works if you use the, this will work on the full range of positive, negative numbers, or positive numbers. Why do I call it carry? It means if I did this subtraction, would I have to carry the 1 without actually doing it and storing the value? Anyway, it's understandable that they did a lazy version of it because the code it takes to do a full proper signed comparison is a bit longer. You have to check the overflow flag as well. You have to exclusive OR it with this works, but they didn't need to, so I'll forgive them. It's fine. Tidying up all these things reduced the code size a little bit. And here's another code reduction I made. Let's say there's a data chunk in memory starting at address 2CFE. I want to keep track of where I am in that chunk. So that means if I'm keeping track, I need another piece of memory to store the number 2CFE itself, which takes 2 bytes, and they go in backwards from what you might expect because reasons. So this bit of memory is acting as a pointer to the other bit. To increment this pointer, so it points to the next address, you just bump the low byte. And if that wraps around to 0 again, you also bump the high byte, just like your odometer in your car. I reorganize some of the game data regions so that they all fit within one page, which is another way of saying that every address of that data has this same high byte, so you don't need to bump it. Interestingly, this program leans very strongly into one-based indexing, even for the text buffers. Most programmers would use 0 indexing. It actually doesn't really matter so much. I decided to leave it as is. There wasn't much to be gained by changing it. But there was a lot of wasted space I found in the code. This was big savings. There were 2 routines that were duplicated in a couple different places. There were a sequence of 19 no operation bytes in a row, which is a useful technique to kind of delete code in place without recompiling. You just replace it with no ops. And there was a lot of junk left after the code blocks, probably at linker segment boundaries, I don't know, but to the tune of 1,047 garbage bytes that I could just tighten right up. So all this left me with plenty of room for any new code I might need to write. I didn't even end up using all that space. Fairplay ended up 91 bytes smaller than the original. So nice, that's convenient. Here's an example of some of the new code I had to write. When you save a game in progress, the original game would write directly to a sector using DOS's read-write track sector API. Even the manual advised this was a terrible idea. Don't use a regular data disk because if you have a file occupying that sector already, it doesn't cooperate with the file system. It'll just you'll clobber it. So I changed that to use the technique that I saw in Ultima 4. You can, even from assembly code, you can use the print API to use a proper file name storage, and now everything's friendly. This is actually a very bad example of using up the extra space because the new code was smaller than the original. They misused the read-write track sector anyway. They had a bad data block, and anyway, cleaned it all up. It's gone. All right. I'm not gonna give you solutions yet. I'm gonna give you plenty of warning before I give away any secrets, but I am about to bring up some of the game elements that you will encounter. So if you really want to be surprised by everything in the game, and experience it for yourself first. It's okay if you want to leave the session early, la 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 la. Or for those of you watching on video, if you want to pause here, come back later. No foul. The game will deliberately stall sometimes, like maybe because there just isn't room for all the lines of text it wants to print. So it'll give you time to read them before clearing and then showing you the rest. Or you might be in danger, and it might, you want to give you player a chance to respond to the danger instead of just dialing because you're rapidly tapping movement keys and you barely even saw the warning message. The trouble is there's no indicator when that stall has elapsed. So like, can I type yet? No. Can I type yet? Can I type yet? Yet? No? Okay, finally, I'm allowed to type again. Super frustrating. So I added a spinner. And you can't, I let you skip it, but not accidentally. You have to type either escape, space, or return. That's the only way to dismiss it. You'll find doors in the game. They animate when you open them, which is pretty cool. But what if you open it twice? Like I say, open door, whoop, and then instead of moving in or going somewhere else, I say open door again. Well, it animates again. That's cool. And then I move forward, and it's like the door had never opened. I bump into the wall, splat. Like, okay. But then if I move forward again without doing anything else, this is okay, and it lets you go in. So I fixed that bug. That was bizarre. Sometimes the game wants to flash the screen at you. I presume that the TRS-80 did this by just filling the text window with solid glyphs, but on the Apple II, that would be kind of slow. So they leveraged the low-res graphics mode instead. High-res and low-res use different areas of memory, and on startup, the game will just fill the low-res memory with a solid color and then toggle it back and forth as needed to flash to the screen. I'm going to explain how the memory is laid out really quick. You'll see why I'm doing this in a second. Low res mode is 40 by 48. You get 16 colors possible for each cell. They store this 2 cells per byte, high and low, and they use 128 byte runs to store double rows, bytes each, 40 at a time, which leaves 8 bytes left over in each run that you can use for whatever you want. So if you're just filling the whole low-res graphic screen yourself with a single color, the easiest code is we'll just flood that whole memory with the same byte. No problem. Except a few years later, ProDOS came out and decided to use those bits of memory for itself. So to make this game ProDOS compatible, I had to revise this routine to say, no, skip these little holes, don't clobber them. There might be valuable data in there. So speaking of ProDOS, I did make a ProDOS edition of it. I nuked the write to tape code, and instead of doing the DOS print thing, I used the ProDOS machine language interface and made it possible to save up to 10 save games at a time, numbered 0 through 9, which is very convenient when you're save scumming because it's an old game. The parser is a simple way of marking synonyms in the word table, and open and unlock were marked such synonyms, which kind of makes sense for open, but it doesn't really always make sense for unlock. Unlocking a box that isn't locked, and it just does it. Like unlock box, okay, inside the box, or unlocking a door. It was a little weird, so I split them up because so I could give you a more sensible response if you try to unlock something that is not locked. It has the game has wind instruments in it, either of which you can play or blow. These are synonymous, but they have custom redirect code in each of the handlers. I'm kind of assuming these were originally completely separate verbs for different instruments, and during playtests, it's like, they should just be the same, but I hadn't written the parser flag yet, so custom code went in. I don't know. The original game only needed 4 letters per word it would recognize. And I found myself going down rabbit holes thinking I was discovering new words it understood. I was really just stumbling on aliases. And that was kind of annoying. So for the Fair Play edition, I require you to just type out the full word, which added 41 bytes to the word table, but cut out 21 bytes of the code for the parser. I think it was worth it to remove a source of player confusion, honestly. In drawing pits, the original game, they were only visible up to 3 units away, and there was a situation in the Fair Play where it ended up being visible 6 units away. And you would think that having to support this would significantly increase the code size, but They actually had four separate but similar draw routines for floor and ceiling and all that. I ended up completely rewriting it using just a single parameterized routine and saving another 31 bytes out of that for arbitrary depth. So that was another win. There's an interesting wrinkle with the get verb. Everything in the game comes in boxes. You can get a box, you can open the box, you can find out what's inside the box. But if you already know what's in the box, maybe because you've played this game before, or because you just dropped that item there, you can just skip directly to get item. It'll automatically open the box for you. You don't have to type in open box. But it does works if the box is at your feet, or if you've picked up a box and not opened it yet, it'll open it. You can just say get item and it'll open it for you. But there's a wrinkle that, like, if it checks the one at your feet first, and then if there's room to pick it up, it'll take it. And then if there isn't one at your feet, then it'll check, oh, is there one you're holding? I'll open that for you. This means it won't open one you're holding if something like there's a multiple item like food. There's multiple food. There could be two. There's a food at your feet. There's an unopened food in your inventory. If you try to open that, it won't, because there's no room to pick up the one at your feet. And so it just gives up. You're like, that's silly. So I just swapped the order. I said, well, check what you're holding first, then check what's at your feet. Everything's happy. Saved more bytes. What do you know? It's smaller to do the smart thing. It's a recurring theme. My test plan for this was bonkers, by the way. I didn't want to miss a trick on any of the combinations of open this. Is there one at my feet? Am I holding one? Is it not? Is it a torch? Is it a food? Is it anything? I made sure very carefully. And now I will be revealing how most of the puzzles are solved. And again, if you want to leave now or pause the video, that's fine. But you will know everything about the game if you stick around. So here we go. I'm going to start with the thing that most irritated me after I'd finished the game, that badass but pointless item, the magic staff. This thing is so cool. It could, thunderbolts, and you strike the staff. It also, you can raise a staff and it shakes. And it doesn't do anything else. I tried using it everywhere. When it says useless energy, it means it. This thing is too cool to have no purpose. Why did you make this? Plus, it was like super hard to get this item all the way to the exit. Like, there's this whole nifty puzzle of carefully balanced dependencies, how to get it safely and all that you might never even bother to solve because you don't need the staff to win. That's a real shame. So I'll explain how I fixed the dependency thing later, but first, to give this thing meaning, I decided, what if instead of just finding the golden key, you had to forge it with lightning out of parts? And I don't know how people are going to imagine these parts. I had to try to describe them in text. What do parts of a golden key look like? But this is what I had in mind. So hopefully that's conveyed by all the nouns I chose. So I added a little thing here to say, okay, let's make sure that raise is required. So if you don't raise it, now you get a separate response. Only sparks shoot out. If you have to raise it first, then you get the thunderbolts. I gotta make sure it's fairly hinted. I put a spike in the roof in the game to suggest, well, maybe I should reach the spike. If you happen to mess around with the staff while you're standing under the spike, if you just strike it without raising it, you'll get they don't reach the, sparks shoot out, but they don't reach the lightning rod. You go, oh, okay, raise it, it's shaking, now strike it. And they blast the lightning rod. And if you happen to be carrying all the golden pieces, that will forge them into the golden key. Oh, thank you. Next, I tackled the moon logic that most annoyed me. Okay, inside this box is blue wool. What do you do with wool? Knit it? Spin it, rub it for static electricity, dye it. No, it's already blue. Stain something else with it. I only discovered its purpose with the try everything strategy. It turns out you're supposed to throw it. Now, normally if you throw items, the monster will eat them. And that's what happens to the wool too, except in this one specific situation where the ground begins to shake and then The disgusting odor permeates. Oh no! And usually this ends in death, where you're the monster's next meal. But in this one situation in the game, instead of waiting, if you throw the wool, the monster will trip on it. Yeah. What? Now, I don't know if this is from some fairy tale. Like, what is there a story where throwing a monster trips on blue wool? If you've actually heard of this, please do let me know. I'm very curious, or leave a note in the comment section or something. I guess now I do like the idea that you have, in order to defeat the monster, you have to trip him first to leave him vulnerable. So how about I just replace the wool with a banana, which you have to peel. I think this actually might have been my wife's suggestion, but I love it. So when you throw the peel, the monster just loses his balance. That's fine. And I put in a hint for early discovery. If you throw the peel, the monster's not around, it slides and gets stuck in the corner. It's just important because I want you to know you can't get it again. This is a one-time use thing. You should use it opportunistically, not try to set up a peel where you might lure the monster later. That's also wasting your time. So unfortunately, I couldn't implement peel the banana because the parser won't let you have both a word as a verb and a noun. If it's a verb, it would never recognize peel as a noun. So I said, all right, well, tell you what, if you eat the banana, the game gives you the peel for it. That's fine. That's fair. Doing all this let me fix another really weird thing about the wool, replacing it with a banana. The game design apparently does not want you to kill the monster with the sword. Okay, you have to use something else. That's fair. And so when you get the sword, the wool vanishes for no reason. Like, even if you're not even carrying the wool, you get this message, the wool vanishes. And you might be like, what wool? I never even saw it this session. How do I even know this? So in order to get the sword, though, you have to have used the snake. So I decide, and when snake, instead of just having the snake disappear, after you've done the thing with the snake will eat the banana and slither away. There you go. That makes sense, right? Well, what if you're not carrying the banana? Well, then the snake will secretly go off and find the banana. You may not know about it, but if you later go to the banana, say, I open this box with a banana in it. Oh, there's a snake! So I'm keeping it all logical in there. The thing is, I couldn't help myself. I had to go look this up factually. And apparently snakes do not eat bananas. They are carnivores and they will refuse fruit. But I couldn't come up with anything I liked better. So, like, after getting mad at myself, I kind of rationalized and said, okay, well, this isn't really moon logic because I'm not requiring you to make the snake eat the banana. It's just a consequence that you're presented with for doing things in the wrong order. Besides, the game's already using cartoon logic. You can't climb a snake either. So I figure this snake can eat a banana. It's fair. There's one more thing you have to do after you kill the monster. You're supposed to collect its blood in an empty jar. This gives me an opportunity to give purpose to another useless item, the Frisbee. This is another one that you throw and it has a different response. It comes back and saws your head off. This is a death maze after all, so at least it's on theme. But how about instead of just being a death trap, we make you use the Frisbee to cut the monster's head off. You want to collect the blood? Use the Frisbee to get it. I'll even add a description to the Frisbee to be fair about foreshadowing its effect before you get all reckless with this dangerous toy. While I was testing all this new logic, I noticed a few inconsistencies. After a certain number of turns elapse, that will start the encounter with the monster. But also, if your torch goes out and it's dark, that will also start an encounter with the monster that you can't win because you can't fight blind. But what if you're already in the lit encounter because the turn's elapsed, and then your torch goes out, like right on the same move that the countdown had elapsed, or even after the encounter started? What if in the middle of the encounter, you drop the lit torch, which makes it go out? Well, I found out that It restarts. Like, okay, so the ground shakes. I get a disgusting odor in the light. I drop my torch. It goes out. And then the ground shakes. And then there's a disgusting odor again. I'm like, all right, well, that's silly. I also realized that in the middle of the encounter, I could ride the elevator. What happens when I do that? Apparently, it just continues the encounter when you get to the next level. So I'm like, okay, what? I'm like, monster chasing me. I get in the elevator, and then did he just ride up with me in silence? Like, ding, ah! And he eats you. So first things first, let's fix the torch. Torch should just continue encounter. That's obvious. What happens, I decided, what happens if I cancel the encounter? I get in the elevator, just cancel it. Forget about the monster. And I get to the next level, and he's not chasing me anymore. Oh my God, this was so awesome. Like, this feels so good that I escaped the monster. There's no other situation in the game you actually get to escape once the monster started on you. I want all players to feel this adrenaline rush. Yeah. How am I going to do that? Well, let's see. How about I find the item that is farthest from the elevator and count how many steps it takes to get there and back. And then I set the countdown timer to 1 minus that. So in order to get this item, you're gonna have the monster start to creep up on you just as you're getting to the elevator so you can just get out alive. It's a great rush. All right, I fixed the staff. I fixed the wool. Now let's talk about the puzzle that this game is so infamous for, the calculator. The real problem with this puzzle is that you just have to make too many inference steps without any reinforcement along the way that you're on the right track. There's just too many possible things to try. I'll show you how this works. This is the puzzle you're given. You find a cul-de-sac with a box in it. You step in and you're given this text: to everything there is a season. And inside the box, you'll find a calculator, and it's displaying 317. If you look closely, you'll see that the display is smudged. So if you rub that, it actually says 317.2. That's interesting. If you think to ask the game for help at this point, because like, what do I do with all this? It will tell you invert in telephone. Okay, now what? I can press buttons on the calculator. It'll change the display. That's actually a red herring. Those buttons on the machine have a different effect later in the game with absolutely no warning that their function has changed. And that's when it turns out that the 0.2 on the display is a useful hint. It's later. It's irrelevant right now. All you need to solve this puzzle are the 317, the song lyrics, and the help text. And so I got rid of the 0.2 entirely. I said, forget that. We're going to have another way to hint that later. This is in the way right now. If you stick around long enough trying stuff out, eventually you get longer song lyrics. In case you're not familiar with the song, to everything, turn, turn, turn. There is a season. Turn, turn, turn. And judging by the online reviews I saw and some playthrough blogs, most people at this point will try using the maze navigation keys to kind of spin in place. They'll try turning themselves right 3, left 1, right 7, like a combination lock. But if you do that, absolutely nothing happens. I think you should know that rotating is the correct action. You just got the numbers wrong. So I put in a contextual hint. It says, all right, well, if you do this, the game will now detect it. And that's when it gives you the invert in telephone hint, because it's not helpful until you've already connected 317 with turn, turn, turn. In fact, I just eliminated the help action entirely because the only other time help is used at full in the game is nowhere. This is the only contextual response it gives. Every single other time in the game, you type in help, all it says is something generic like, well, type instructions. Like, thanks, I was doing that. So I just nuked it. How do we interpret invert in telephone, though? I'm going to walk you through the final steps of this thing. It helps to be living in 1980 when calculators all had these 7-segment displays, and it was kind of a popular fad to turn them upside down to spell things. So if you invert 317, you get LIE. It also helps to know that telephones in 1980 all had letters on their keypads or their dials. So If you want to telephone LIE, you would dial 543, and that is the combo that lets you out of the box. Right? Yeah, you all are having that same reaction anyone who's ever played this game has had. Incidentally, I think 543 is kind of a bad choice for a secret combo. I mean, it's not as bad as 123, right? But like one of my friends at the time was just goofing around and he's like, "Ah, I don't know what else to try." And you mess around with it. And he tried rotating 10 times, 9 times, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And the lock opened. And he boasted to me the next day he'd cracked this puzzle. Of course, he couldn't explain why it worked. Yeah. So, where are we now? The next puzzle. Okay, that's the calculator. The next thing that annoyed me, Moon Logic, was the perfect square. If this is supposed to be a hint, I don't get it. So the solution here is that you're supposed to walk through the wall like it's not even there. It's a hologram. Okay. This gives me an opportunity. I could change that. I could give it a better hint, or I can give us another purpose for another useless item in the game, the brush. So let's do something with the brush. It was described as being used by Van Gogh, but that's totally irrelevant to the game. So I said, well, what if it's made by Acme? Acme, if you don't know, is the company that supplied Wile E. Coyote in the cartoons with all of his supplies. And I said, what we're going to do here is we're going to paint ourselves a door. Again, we're already using cartoon logic, right? And maybe this is, you need a hint on what you're supposed to paint. So let's call it the magic door, all right? This wasn't too hard to implement, actually, because the game already has code for opening doors. It already has a special case check for when you're standing right here. All you have to do is now treat this panel like a door instead of a missing wall. Oh, we're also going to need some black paint. So that comes next. But so instead of having the glass jar be initially full, we'll have it be full of black paint instead of being empty when you find it. And I did toy with the idea of letting the player just paint a door into any wall, anywhere for good discoverability. Oh, it makes magic doors. Or even, just a plain door. And if you try to open it, it's like, no, this is just a painting. But I didn't want to deal with an arbitrary number of painted walls. And if I made it a single-use thing that introduces a new unwinnable state you painted yourself into, it kind of goes against my design goals. So instead, I just said, all right, you can't paint anywhere else. If you try, you'll get a cheeky response that recycles the original description. So Van Gogh's still in the game. It's just now kind of a taunt instead of a red herring, thinking it's important and it's not. When you go through, the original game just had a blank wall on the backside. Well, I want to draw the door there now too. The trouble is it's too far away to draw. The game only had code to draw doors in these exact 4 positions. The only ones they needed, it's the only ones they wrote code for. I'm like, all right, well, I could do what I did with the pits and make this generic and all that, but it was a lot simpler to just bump the wall. So that you never see this door from any new angles. It's just the ones you can already draw. This doesn't change the topology of the map. It doesn't change the movement count. It's a lot easier to do, so I justified it to myself. While I was in here, I'm modifying descriptions. I got rid of another absurdism here. 90 pounds is a lot for a sword. Real swords at most are 7 pounds or so. I don't think this guy on the cover art could even lift a 90-pound sword. That's crazy. So the specific number isn't even important, really. It's just a red herring. So I just described it. It's heavy. You get the idea. There were originally several. Sometimes you'll get more descriptions if you look at an item than when you pick it up. You get one description. If you look at it, you get more depth. And originally there were only 2 items that had them. I added a few more. I already mentioned the frisbee. The dagger is another item where I gave an additional description. It talks about a jeweled handle there, and I'm like, oh, does that mean it's valuable? Am I supposed to pry that jewel off? No, that's a red herring. Forget it. It's sharp. Get rid of the jewel. The thing is, the dagger does need to be single use for structural puzzle reasons, and disappearing or vanishing it doesn't explain why, it just does. So I'm like, well, how about it just breaks? Let's at least give it a little plausibility here. And I'll give you a look description to say, why does it break? It's flimsy, it's fragile, it's not very sturdy. Normally, when you look at things that have no special text. It just it gives you a generic description. You know, there's absolutely nothing of value, which was kind of overstating the case. I toned that down just a little bit. So it's nothing of interest. And when you look, you just type look without a target. The game gave you this really dumb response too, like look at, you want to look at your monitor. Let's turn that into a hint. Look at what? I can give you help if you tell me what to look at, you know. Here's the dagger. Okay, the dagger's part of this intricately balanced puzzle I had mentioned earlier for bringing his staff to the exit. Here we go. There is no immediate way to cross this pit. There's a corridor that goes around it, but it's guarded by a vicious dog who will gladly rip your throat out. And there's another dog on this level that you'll encounter while roaming around to collect stuff. So let's see. You've got 2 single-use items that can defeat the dogs. You're good here. You got the sneaker and the dagger. But unfortunately, you need that dagger later on. So you really just have the 1 sneaker. All right. What about the sword? The sword is reusable, capable of killing both dogs, but it's down below that pit. So you'd have to come back up here somehow with it later. And there are 2 ways to return up a pit, but they both involve single-use items that you need elsewhere to win. There's the charmed snake, which can get you up the pit, but you'll have already used the snake just getting the sword. So that's out. Well, I could get the sword and then use the calculator to teleport myself here. The calculator only gives you 1 shot and you need it to reach level 5. So that's out too. I can't come back later. There's no way. I can't do it. So I guess the only viable solution to collect that box is just to avoid this guard dog. Don't worry about him. Leave him there. Launch myself across the pit with the verb fart. Believe it or not, this was actually mentioned in the instructions on the TRS-80 and for some reason got removed in the Apple II edition. They don't mention it anywhere. So I added an in-game hint for that. So if you're eating the food instead of this kind of, it's being digested, sterile response, I said, well, it gives you gas. Wink, wink. Maybe try it. What does that mean, you know? All right, so you've done it. You've got across the pit. You get the box. What's in the box? Absolutely nothing of value. Stupid! Except I did make the staff important, so actually now you do have to figure out fart in order to win, you know. But I broke something else when I gave purpose to all those items that were useless before. Now, instead of having 6 items you need to bring down the pit, you got to bring all 8. Oh, your inventory limit's 7. I'm so sorry. Well, I guess I could relocate one of these items to a lower level, but instead I made the calculator reusable. And I wanted to do that anyway, because I mean, the thing's got 10 buttons. If only one of them's useful, you're going to want to try them all. Why do you got to force yourself to reload a saved game after each try? By the way, that 0.2 on the display, that was supposed to be hinting to you which button is the right choice. But I nuked that because it was cluttering the turn solution. And it's no longer relevant because now I'm going to make multiple destinations useful, not just the one, which makes this a more interesting gadget. But more importantly, it solves 2 issues for me. So in addition to getting yourself to level 5, it can now use it to recover some item, whatever item you left behind here that you want to get later because you can't carry them all down. And I'm going to use it to access a cool place where I'm hiding a piece of the key. I'll show you that. And also, I figured let's make this thing behave more consistently. Don't just give me numbers at one time and then it teleports me later with no explanation. It should always teleport me. I want you to be able to discover early what this thing's for so that you know later on you have to defeat the monster in order to use it. So it always teleports you. But to keep that interlock, the monster will teleport with you. So you can't use it early. You have to beat the monster first. But now there's a reason you might remember it. It also alleviates the pacing stall after you've dispatched the monster, wondering, okay, I killed him. Now, what do I do? Like, what's changed? Nothing. You might remember, oh, I couldn't use the calculator before. Now I can. So progression. All right, this means I'm shuffling placements of stuff around because now if I can reuse the calculator, I can use it to bring the sword back and kill the dog and get what's behind the pit. And you don't have to solve the fart puzzle, which in general, okay, it's not terrible to have 2 valid solutions to a puzzle, but since fart isn't used anywhere else in the game, like, It kind of has to be mandatory here. So, all right, to make it mandatory, I'll fix this. I'll put the flute over there instead of the staff because you can't get the sword unless you've already used the flute, unless you already have the flute. So you could still later on bring the sword up and you can kill that dog, just not before getting the flute, only afterwards. So you can't use it to bypass figuring out the fart puzzle. I wanted to put something else where the flute was anyway, for this timing thing puzzle. Like, it has to be something you need to collect before the monster dies, because otherwise you could just miss out on the elevator escape and you'd collect it after he dies. It doesn't matter when you get it. So I put the jar there. That way you're going to have to collect the jar, because the banana is behind the magic door. So no banana for you to defeat the monster till you've already escaped it breathing down your neck. Where the jar used to be, I'll put one of the pieces of the new golden key that I made. I'll also put a piece where the full key used to be, and I'll put a piece inside this little hidden box that you can't get into, which always bothered me. Like, how do I get in there? How do I get in there? So now it looks like the calculator's set of destinations were chosen kind of arbitrarily. So I reassigned the one that looked least interesting to send you inside this little closet. And I put a piece of the key in there for you to find. And the last piece of the key, how about this disappointingly vacant long hallway? That'll give you something to find down there before overcoming the vampire bat, where everything else is behind it. The maps of every level, they're mostly square, mostly. Level 5, I'll show you how I fix that in a minute. But level 1, I wanted to square that up because otherwise, once you're shown the map isn't necessarily square, you're never really confident you fully explored your level. So I think you should be confident in that. So again, you're not wasting time. So on level 1, you are given a hat to wear that's inscribed "Charge near a wall." Charge a wall near where you found this. And you might think, all right, I got this. It's going to be down there, right? I'm going to charge that wall. But it's not. It's this other wall ahead, you know. Now I get that the author wanted this to be a trick, right? But as one blogger described it, like, I know the game would be harsh, but this is just cruel. Also, it leaves you wondering, how am I going to get in? How are you supposed to get into that cell for the rest of the game? And you can't. So I extended the hall. Forget that. And I squared up the map, which does, unfortunately, removes the temptation to charge down that corridor. And it's a cool animation of charging. So I just moved the hat down to the other end. I also made the hat single use because it never works anywhere else but here. And I was wasting so much time just bashing my head around, which kills you. And I have to reload and save scum to figure out what else can I knock down. And you can't. So one use, done, over. The funny thing about this pit that you fall down level 1 to get to level 2, it's the only one that the author never expected you to try climbing back up. The code just doesn't have a check for it. It acts like any other place where there is no pit overhead if you try. You just bonk, your head smashes in the ceiling. That kind of makes sense because, you know, the flute was down on level 4 and the snake is single use. So if you use it to climb up to level 2, you couldn't have it to then also climb up to level 1. It's gone. But you could use the calculator to teleport up to 2 with the snake and the flute. And that's how I found out what happens when you try and you smash your head. And you could also use the calculator to teleport directly all the way back to 1, where you will find that the wall you supposedly knocked down is still there. You had a reusable hat, so you could just charge it again, but I broke the hat and I'm like, all right, I just fixed both those things. In the Fair Play edition, you can climb up and the wall stays knocked down. It's all fine. Besides, since I moved the flute now to level 2 with the snake, I made it a lot more accessible for players to actually try this out. So it had better work right. When you reach level 5, a draft will blow your torch out. And the solution here is, of course, to raise the ring, which activates light everywhere. And it only does this on level 5. This is, again, a single time thing that suddenly magically behaves differently and no reason is given why. So since I had made rub a useless verb, now when I remove the smudgy display, now there's nothing left to rub. I'm like, oh, I got it. We're going to rub the ring instead. And then it glows. It becomes a cigarette lighter. I can relight my torch that blew out. And this also gives you early discovery. If you throw your torch down and it goes out, you can pick it up and relight it with the ring. You go, all right, I may need to know this later, and you do. I gave you a little description of the ring to encourage doing this. Describe it as dusty. And yeah, so I thought we'd already been through this. The ground begins to shake and a disgusting odor. Like, isn't the monster dead already? Oh, it's the monster. Oh my, here we go again. Okay. So we're gonna, in case you weren't sure what this item was for all this time, it turns out it's for the mother's monster. You blow the horn and she has been seduced. Now, all this time, I've been wondering what the brass horn was for, and I realized it never describes it as brass. I hallucinated that. I just assumed it was brass. Okay, they probably meant like an animal horn. You blow a horn. Oh, and it seduces. You're talking mother's language. That makes more sense. Well, let's just describe it that way then. It's a ram's horn. Aha! That gives me a connection and a reason to make the hat single use. It breaks, and the ram's horns on it, one falls to the floor. Ha! It was super easy to implement this too. All I had to do was move the horn's starting place in the game to the bottom of the pit. And I needed a place to put the staff anyway. I was wondering where to put that. So we can go where the horn used to be. Tidy. To give a hint, I figure, all right, when you blow the horn anywhere else, it describes as deafening. So I'll add a little bit of text to suggest deafening. She screeches deafeningly. Maybe you'll put the two together and that'll hint, oh, maybe I should try using the horn here. Now, this gives me a last opportunity to use our final unused, useless item, the yo-yo. It hits you in the eye. I'm like, all right, we'll extend this encounter just a little bit so that you can't kill the mother because she sees you coming. So you got to yo-yo her first to blind her, and then you can kill her. Now I have a use for the yo-yo. Yay. Now, like mother, like monster, she will always show up in the dark, but you can only defeat her in the light. So this sequence here, when your torch goes out and it's darkness, this starts the dark encounter. Ground begins to shake. And I'll explain that in a sec. But it kicks off, when this happens, it kicks off the timer for the lit encounter later. As soon as it goes out, it's like, all right, I'm going to count down. Once you've lit, eventually you're going to see her in the light. But it turns out there's an exploit here. You can evade her simply by dropping the ring, and darkness falls and the encounter starts, and then you pick it up again and you have just enough time to light the room, and then it cancels the encounter and it has reset the timer. So you do this every so often, you just keep resetting the timer, you win the game without ever defeating her. Well, anyway, I changed the ring purpose. So now you have to rub it and then light the torch. So you don't have enough time to drop the torch, pick up the torch, rub the ring, light the, you're going to get eaten. But you still could postpone the encounter with teleporting. That resets the counter as well. But at least that also resets your position. So I can prevent this exploit by making sure there's at least one item that you can't reach before the countdown elapses. You're going to have to beat the monster's mother in order to get this item, in order to win the game. That's just path -1. There are a couple more death traps down on level 5. One is yet another fake elevator. Yawn. You've already seen a couple of those, fool me twice and all that. But the other is a corridor with 5 gigantic keyholes, only one of which does not lead to instant doom. Here's how they look close up. And yet, when you interact with them, the game describes it as a door. Yeah, 20,000 volt shock. Hope you saved your game. It is a death maze. You should have expected that. But I figured it doesn't really look like a door. It just looks like a keyhole in the wall. So I'll adjust the drawing. It's pretty easy to split the subroutine that draws elevators. So I can draw the frame without the midline. And I ended up reusing a glyph that already existed to draw a normal keyhole. So now it just looks like a normal door with a giant decorative keyhole. I feel, though, there should be a way to detect which door is correct without cheesing the save system, right? Maybe add a verb, knock, and you hear unpleasant noises or something. But, better yet, what if we give this fake elevator a purpose? Let's take advantage of the fact that opening the door and entering the elevator are separate actions. I'll put a hint on the back wall. So you have to open it and not go in order to win. The phrasing of this phrase here, will you trust me, is both, it serves as a taunt because it teases the elevator's hazardous nature, but it's also a hint. It's telling you which of the 5 doors you should pick. Of course, you could skip this thing by just trying all 5 doors. So, I randomized it each session. And make sure you can't just stumble on the right one by chance without dealing with the elevator. It only assigns the correct door when this text is printed, so you have to see it. All right, maybe that's mean of me. Maybe that makes the game harder and more challenging. But I think it's more fair and more sensible to modern audiences than having to just, how was I supposed to know which door was correct? Well, you had to try them all. Well, I can't because I died. Yeah, you had to restore save game. This one, at least when you're like, oh, there was a hint in the elevator. Okay, that's on me. The hint was there. It was fair. Fair. The grand finale of the game is very tightly scripted. At each step, there is only one correct action, or you die immediately, just like Lot's wife in the Bible. I decided let's rip out this huge block of custom code. Let's replace it with just normal game logic with a very simple check whether you ever turn around or not, which gives you a little more freedom to kind of experiment with what should I try at the end. Again, without just restoring and, oh, I did the wrong thing, try again, try again, try again. I ended up having to, I changed the phrasing too so that it's a little more consistent with the story of Lot's wife. Don't look back. That's what turns you into a pillar of salt, not taking unnecessary turns. Looking back does it. So I had to adjust the map. The original sequence didn't actually exist in the map. It just drew what it needed at each step. So I tweaked that a little bit and squared it up. So to get past the final elevator trap, yes, there's one more. Don't go in there. It's a bed of spikes and the fake floor. Oh no. You're going to need the exploding ball to get past this thing. Boom. And I wasn't really happy with just drawing like a safe passage. I felt the need to kind of explain what happened. Oh, the ceiling collapsed. It filled a hidden pit. Oh, yeah. For discovery and consistency, I really want the ball capable of destroying any open door in the game. Make it consistent. And since you only get the one ball, I only really need to track which door got permanently broken. So I added a little bit of code to disallow opening the broken door and to print an existing stock message. If you try to open it, it's impossible. And just a little bit of draw code for a cracked midline now. It was just 6 glyphs. It's pretty short. And you know what? There's other things that were inconsistent. If you break things, it just says, okay, you break it, it disappears. Like the sneaker. You broke the sneaker, it disappears. This is an explosive ball. It should go boom. Same thing if you burn it. Boom. If you try to play ball, parser actually recognizes, oh yeah, you can play ball, but it'll give you this phrase, with who? The monster. And there's no sensible answer to that. Like there is no one to play ball with. I'm like, well, what about the dog? What if I want to play ball with the dog? Boom! You are challenged with one last question before you can exit the game, once you get past the exploding ball thing and all that. It says, before I let you go free, what was the name of the monster? Who is this? Like Tim, the wizard? Like, the game's talking to me now. It has totally broke my sense of immersion, like, with this first person. That makes no sense. Anyone have a guess what the name of the monster might have been? If you give it the wrong answer, it will tell you Beowulf disagrees. So yes, Grendel is in fact the right answer. Although if you use the say verb with the right answer, it doesn't count. It's kind of weird that they implemented the say verb, but gave it no use anywhere in the game at all. So I changed it to make say is required. And I removed the verb Grendel from the verb list. And I put this on the wall to eliminate this 11th hour faceless narrator. And I phrased it in a way that encourages you to use the word say. Monster's name must never be spoken. But then I lost the Beowulf hint, so I had to move that somewhere else. Sorry, that can be on the sword. If you inspect the sword, it's inscribed with Beowulf. And by the way, I reread Beowulf, the whole thing, because of this project. There is nothing in there about blue wool. Still don't know where that came from. Last but not least, I changed the success response into a fake out. Oh no, the ground's shaking again. But it's not another monster. It's the wall opening up to reveal some victory art along with this nice message. Yay, you've escaped. And instead of just putting you into a deadlock loop of the game where you have to press the Apple reset button to get back, I said, okay, if you press a key, it'll reset for you or drop you back at the basic prompt. So you want to see the victory art, right? Nope. Go play it. You want to see it? Go play it. And if you want to challenge, you're like, but you already told me how everything works. This is going to be boring to replay it. I'll let you know it is possible to speed run without encountering the dogs. So good luck trying that if you want to. And it's all available on the GitHub. My GitHub, you can download it, read my even more in-depth write-up. Thank you very much. I am 2 minutes over time, so I don't know if there's questions. You may want to just find me later so that we can keep the program moving.
Yeah, I think we should.
Okay.
Thanks.
Talk to me later.